It's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and this video has been kindly sponsored by Audible, and you know the score by now. Titan, painting the panels, no time to waste. Let's go. Last episode we painted the big old leg panels, and now it's time for the top half of this gargantuan miniature, in very inverted commas. On top of all the protective armor plates, there are a couple of other parts that we'll paint at the same time, like the shoulder-mounted Apocalypse missile launchers, the massive bolt cannon thing that goes on the Titan's fist, and of course, the head. Before we start painting, I need to get rid of these Sharpie marks that I made to demonstrate which way up the panels will go. A few people warned me that the ink would bleed through any paint I put over it, so to play it safe, I scribbled on some more Sharpie to reactivate it, and then used alcohol to rub off the wet ink. There's a little bit of staining left over, but yeah, that should be fine. Once again, priming just using Citadel Chaos Black Spray. Not technically a primer, but it seems to offer a pretty strong protective and adhesive layer on the resin, so we'll just go for that again. We were filming this in a bit of a cold snap in the UK. It was freezing temperatures outside and we were really struggling to warm the studio even up to 12 degrees, and the blue tack was really firm and not sticking well at all, but we eventually got all of the panels mounted on some wood offcuts for spraying. Remember to mask up for safety, but also remember to check your mask for any unwanted friends, like this little Tyranid invader. All set. No problem spraying in the cold, not sure why people seem to have problems with it. So long as you're shaking the can well beforehand and doing multiple light coats from a reasonable distance, you should never have any problems with misbehaving primers or spray cans. Let me know if you'd find a simple, dedicated video on best practices for priming and spraying useful, and I'll make one at some point. All the parts got flipped for reverse side spraying. Some areas of black paint came off with the blue tack, but no worries. The next step of painting on Abaddon black with a brush should hide any areas where the spray didn't quite reach, or the paint peeled off. Once the black was dry, it was time to paint up the reverse sides of the panels. These won't be that visible, but this is a pretty fancy model, and I think it's worth making them match the ancient metal understructure. A heavy overbrush with a rich dark brown, a lighter dry brush with a mid-tone metallic, and a highlight with a bright silver. And then an all-over wash with my DIY dip wash. While we do this, let me tell you about my fun discovery on Audible, the sponsor of this video. If you've been watching for a while, you'll know I'm also a big video game fan too, the kind of massive nerd who keeps a list of the almost 250 games I've finished, all with a mark out of 10. Anyway, 4 of those titles on the list are retro-style point-and-click games by Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, the guy that's now probably best known for the zero punctuation game reviews. Anyway, I had no idea he was also an author, so I was excited to see what his novels were like. Yahtzee is best known for being a critic, and given one of the top criticisms critics receive is that they just judge and don't make creative stuff themselves, I had high hopes that he'd set the bar pretty high for himself, and I wasn't disappointed. We'll Save the Galaxy for Food is a funny, fast-paced sci-fi romp that feels, in a similar way to Red Dwarf, a bit more realistic thanks to the galaxy-weary, jaded star pilot at the centre of the plot. The story's great, the in-story culture and universe is very well realised, and it's just a lot of good fun. Yahtzee's narration is also great, and it's nice to hear the characters' voices and the intonation as the author actually imagined them too. If you fancy giving it a go, or any other title in Audible's vast library, you can get 1 free credit on me at audible.com/midwinterminis or by texting midwinterminis to 500500 for a 1-month free Audible Plus trial on me. And you can also get full access to Audible's fantastic included audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive shows. As you can see, all that handling rubbed off a little more of the black spray, so we touched up the front sections with black again, and we moved on to the texture sponging of various layers of grey paint. We had to take a minute to figure out which way up some of the panels went though, because this method makes a smooth fade from mid-grey to black at the bottom of each panel, but some were, well, is it this way up? Who knows? Even the construction manual didn't really give us much of a clue. How are you supposed to figure anything out from this stupid angle? Better test it on the actual model to be sure. Okay, so once we knew, we started sponging on the gradients. Some gentle dry brushing to bring out the soft textures added from the scratches, scrapes, and technical paints, and then a gloss varnish to seal everything in, making the paint a bit more robust and making a save point that we can easily rub accidental paint splodges away to reveal this texture underneath at any point. Next step, base coating the trim with Baharoth blue, and time to bring out the big guns. Not fancy paintbrushes or a new palette or a snazzy painting handle. My mum is here to help. She came to visit me and the twins for a few days, and as she's naturally my biggest fan, I thought it would be fun to get her involved helping out on the Titan. She was a bit worried she wouldn't be any good because she hadn't painted any models since we dabbled in mini painting back in the mid-90s, but she soon found her stride again. I actually think the panels she did were neater than mine. Now, to add some realistic, chaotic texture to the trim, we used these little sponge brushes, which I had forgotten I had. Much more accurate than torn bits of sponge. You could probably make your own sponge brush with some scissors, any old stick and some hot glue. You don't need to go out and buy a dedicated tool. A little filter of athematic blue to add some subtle colour, and oh, who's this? Poor old Ness is sad because you haven't clicked like on the video yet. Poor puppy. I'm sure they just did now, don't worry. Good girl. The trim on the bottom half of all the panels was highlighted with Baharoth blue again, and the top half was highlighted with a mix of Baharoth blue and white. That way it'll help give the impression that the top halves of the huge panels are getting hit with more light than the darker bottom halves. With all that highlighting, I'm trying to mimic that patchy, rough, patinaed look that the sponging layers have given everything. Sketchy, fast highlights are the way to go, and bonus, it takes way less time than being super methodical and accurate. Some Vallejo white grey to accentuate some of the most prominent details all over, and I also added some scratches and cracks on the paintwork where it looked appropriate too, again guided by the sponged patterns. The cog design that forms part of the Adeptus Titanicus icon on the huge pauldrons hadn't been painted yet, and before I go any further with the weathering, it needs to be painted. I reckon a bit of gold would really pop out on this model now, so it got a couple of base coats of Retributor armour, a shade with gloss Agrax Earthshade, and then an edge highlight and a texture stipple with silver ink tinted with burnt umber ink. While I was doing that, Hattie was on the home straight, adding dirty down rust effects to the craters, scrapes and recesses on the armour plates. Once the effect was cured, we wiped away any excess and softened the edges of the rust with a damp cotton bud. This is where the water-soluble nature of the dirty down effects really help, as you can keep adding and removing them until they look just the way you want them to. To add some contrast to the rusty bits where the rust paint hadn't bloomed, we used Coat d'Arms Bilious Brown. A few streaks here, a few waterlines there, and some extra spice in the blooming recesses. Hattie also wanted to get a bit more used to the airbrush, so she took over for the final step, giving all the panels a couple of thin coats of matte varnish to seal everything in, protect it, flatten the reflectivity of the panels, and tie everything together. Right then, shall we? We are so close to getting this massive thing done and dusted. While it might look finished, and I would certainly be happy to field it in a stupidly big game of 40k now, for me to be fully satisfied, it needs to have a few finishing touches. The missiles need to be painted up and added to the launchers. Do you think they should all be there, or do you think some of them should be missing after being launched? The exhausts and backblast vents on the weapons and engines need some soot and dirt. The exposed cabling and pipework needs to be accented somehow. The sensors and lenses on the head need to be finished. The lights on the waist should also be painted bright too. I think some pigment weathering powder would be good to tie the feet into the base. I'd like to add some reflected, glowing light from the plasma annihilator on the armor panels around it. And speaking of armor panels, the casing of the gun and the fist both need to be painted up to match the other panels, which should be really easy to do considering I can't take them off and I have to paint around the whole model now. Now, what do you think about having some snow on either the base, the model, or both? That would really fit the Midwinter Minis theme, huh? Also, as I said in my last video, I really want to add some ornate drapery, flags, and purity seals with the names of all the channel's Patreon supporters printed in Gothic script. I've now taken a snapshot of all of the current Patreon supporters, and I'll do my best to include every single one on the Titan somehow in the next episode. And obviously, because I said that's what I was going to do in the last video, we had quite a few new signups. So huge thanks to our newest supporters: Pleasantly Grim, Niklas Pippel, Juz, Daxter47, DJ Kuroto, Wayne Odell, Barakai Rain, Very Stoic, Marconius, Reg Narasad, Don Banach, Jan von Fragstein, Andrew B33, Jason Matheson, Strigoi Ghoul Queen, Andreas the Devil, Lunarstorm, James Lees, Toa Rivers, Anthony McQuiddy, Tessa Grant, Paul Redmond, Bobcat79, Timothy Darkcaster, That There Westy, Dane Nelson, Jake Pritchard, Madame Maeve, Leo Bulzer, Cody Newton, Isaac Jolson, Jesse Ryan, Benjamin Turner, Aria Morningstar, Virez, Cassie Uwu76, Stig Pony, Matthew Short, Sweet JT, James Cameron Clark, Skinny Man, AR Command, Kane, Comedy Mode, Arrowski, Captain Grimm, W. Eli, Stephen Timms, Deathcore Joe, Val, Kel LET, Subcarry, Jack Kulikowski, Haas, Illogical Blocks, your boy Sam36, Chonky Lads, Max von Schulman, Kev Sherritt, Xanthes, Fluep, Burnt Kona, Joshua Hamer, Tristan Williams, Intrepid, Monk Rab, DTHMR Painting, Tyler Thatcher, Wriggles, Jimmy Wilson, Will Earnshaw, Silverback Prime, Matt, Farm Villain, Speedy BRE, Barbatos1218, Mox Amber, V Sweeney, Cheesy Paladin, Exonia Jackal, Charles Menny, Lee Robinson, Michaela Irish, Liam Robbins, St. Pascalian, Adam Drysdale, and Chris Jensen. And a couple of extra fun bits before we go. First off, Hattie recently went to a live performance of The Nightmare Before Christmas, met Danny Elfman, and they got a photo together with the Oogie Boogie Great Unclean one she made for Halloween. How cool is that? Also, I was kindly invited to join the Jingle Jam fundraiser this year, and I was planning to do as much of the stuff that you've seen in this video in one go on a live stream, but some family stuff kind of knocked the wind out of my sails a bit and I didn't really feel up to it. Anyway, I made a little video saying sorry because I kind of felt I'd let a lot of people down, but you insanely awesome bunch raised over $3.5 grand for the mental health charity Calm on the Midwinter Minis page despite me not actually even being able to do the stream. Bonkers. Not only that, thanks to the generous bidders on the 100 coats models, we raised an extra £370 for Calm on top of that. Outstanding. This is going to be the last Midwinter Minis video for 2022. I'm taking the twins on a little holiday to see my uncle for the new year, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an amazing Christmas and New Year too. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to grab a free month of Audible on me at audible.com/midwinterminis, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, babies, can you say bye-bye to everyone?
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Aw, perfect. Bye for now. Can you say Midwinter Minis?
Me.